Hey everybody, so this is a review for the Oktava MK-012-01 and the Sontronics STC-10. So I recently bought a pair of the Sontronics STC-10s and for some reason they came broken out of the box, or one of them did. It didn't have as much output as the one that's working well, which is the one I'm using now. So I'm gonna have Tom and give me the money back for that, and in the meantime I bought the Oktavas, which are, you know, sort of a step above that, whereas the Sontronics go for 110, I believe 110 euros each. The pair of Oktavas was only 300 euro, but that's because of Black Friday discount, so I don't know if that's the actual price. I think the actual price is actually closer to 400 euros, which would be around $450, I think. I'm also going to throw in the MXL-VV67, which is a large condenser, but I'm going to do a review of that microphone later. That microphone is the one I use mostly on vocals, and for all of my covers you can see on my channel, you can probably tell that I'm using that microphone on most, if not all, of the covers. So also I'm using one of the Oktavas to record my voice, as well as one to record the acoustic guitar. A couple of things I'd like to mention before I start doing the quick acoustic guitar demo I'm going to do is presentation. Even though these two microphones aren't necessarily in the same tier, because I guess one of them is almost double the price of the other when comparing the Sontronics to the Oktava. Still, I have to say that Oktava did a really good job at packaging these microphones, and I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So for what it is, in my case 300 euros, I got this lovely wooden box that I'm going to use to carry the microphones in, probably. It's lovely, it's not overdone, it's a very simple wooden box. It houses the microphones as well as, well, the capsule and the microphones. They usually come detached. And you can have the pads, the 10 dB pad that you can add onto, if the camera will focus on that, that you can add to the microphone between the capsule and the microphone body. This is lovely, this is good foam, as you can see, nice padding. You can even have these cutouts for if you buy extra. I'm assuming that's the reason why it's there. If you buy extra capsules, if you want to buy a omnidirectional capsule, for example, you can have that in the same box, which is pretty cool if you're out and about recording musicians and stuff like that. If you're recording a drum set or something like that, and suddenly you need one of your microphones to be omnidirectional for some reason. So that's the Oktava box, and again, this is something that's not as relevant maybe to talk about, but I find this to be relevant. So as opposed to that, we have the Sontronics box. Here it is in all its glory. Sure, one thing that you can preface this by is that the Oktavas are made in Russia, so they're probably slightly higher budget than the Sontronics in general anyway. Because Sontronics are made in China, that's the whole point, is that this is an affordable microphone. But Oktavas are quite affordable as well, if I can say that. So this is the box you get for the Sontronics, and I'm not too happy with it, I'm gonna be honest. You get this crappy foam. I mean, it does its job, but it like sort of falls apart. You can see that where they cut out the foam, a lot of material is coming out of it, and it gets everywhere because of static electricity. It gets stuck to everything. My hands, whatever I'm wearing, it'll probably get stuck to that. It'll get stuck to the microphones as well. Also, you just close this little lip on top of here, and that's all the protection you get from above, because there's no foam on top of the microphone. So that's like kind of concerning, right? You don't want anything to fall on top of this, otherwise if it's something sharp or something like that, it will go straight to the microphone, possibly damaging it. So now that we got that out of the way, even though it might not be as relevant as some of the other aspects, let's listen to the three, in this case, microphones recording this. 1 second. This lovely acoustic guitar that I got for like very, very cheap in a secondhand store. The build is, as you can see, it's a lovely Egmont guitar, handmade, I believe, in Holland, or just made in Holland. This is possibly from like the 70s or 80s, I'm not entirely sure. This is just for reference that I'm giving you this information. Anyway, I'm gonna place the three microphones pointing somewhere around the bridge. This is not exactly an acoustic guitar, it's a semi-acoustic, so it doesn't have a sound hole per se. It has a half holes here, but you're not going to point it at the 12th fret or something like that as you would with a regular acoustic guitar. So I usually point it at the bridge and it gets an interesting result, I should say. And yeah, we're going to listen to the three separate microphones one at a time, and you'll be able to tell which one is the more interesting, obviously subjective. One thing to consider is that they're all mounted in one stand, so it's relatively hard to get them to get the capsules exactly in the same spot, or as close as possible to the same spot, but they are at the same distance from the guitar, so you gotta get the same. They have the same input gain as well, same cables, and they're pointed generally at the same place, if that makes sense. So what you're gonna listen to is mostly the differences in timbre between the microphones themselves, hopefully. And here it goes. So as you can tell, I'm not the greatest guitar player in the world, but this is just a quick demo of some chords just so you can get somewhat of an idea of what you're getting if you're planning to buy either one of these microphones. I have to say I really like the sound of the MXL, and I often use that on the acoustic guitar. I've used the SONTRONICS. This is my first time using the Oktava, so I'm going to go back and listen. This is, a review as well as experimenting with the microphone. With the Oktava in particular for the first time, and I'm doing this with you on camera for the first time, so I'm going to go back and listen to these three, and I'm going to give my opinion of it, the comparison between the SONTRONICS and the Oktava, what I think about the Oktava, what I think about the SONTRONICS, and yeah, through the magic of editing, I'll see you in a second. Okay, so now we're back at the studio proper, and we're going to listen to each one individual microphone, starting with the Oktava. So the Oktava, in my opinion, has a relatively balanced frequency response. It doesn't have too harsh high end, but it does have a nice and full low end, as you can tell by my voice being recorded through the microphone. This guitar does not have the low ends of a regular acoustic guitar, a Western or a folk acoustic guitar, as you will, and so you're not gonna get that body, that low ends from this guitar, regardless of the microphones. Focus on that. We're mostly measuring the accuracy of the high end and mid range, in my opinion, is what we're really focusing on with this particular sound clip. So now let's jump to the MXL, and this is again here just for comparison's sake. So immediately you can tell that the MXL-A has a bit more output, because again, let's remember that I have the same input gain in all of the microphones, or as close to it as I can. But it has a lot more mid-range, a lot more defined mid-range, overall a more balanced microphone, I believe. But at the same time, it's a more expensive microphone, as well as B being a large condenser microphone. There's going to be a bit more detail, at least from my experience with working with small diaphragm versus large diaphragm. So let's now listen to finally the Sontronics. Okay, so wow, the Sontronics are louder by a long shot than either one of the previous microphones. They have a lot more high ends for sure. They probably don't have as much low ends or as interesting low ends as the previous two microphones do. But one thing is for sure, man, it does have a lot of output. For some reason, maybe the electronics are better. I don't actually understand too much about electronics, but I don't know what it is, but it has a lot of power, a lot of punch to it. It is a bit harsh on the high end, in my opinion. It's a bit sort of twangy, but maybe that's also because of the guitar, but how it sounds like the guitar has a particular timbre that it's not necessarily acoustic guitar-y, if that makes any sense. But yeah, I might just keep these microphones or end up buying a new pair of the Sontronics, or maybe a step above of these ones, because they are interesting. They have some interesting qualities to them, I think. In my opinion, at least they do. I don't know which ones you prefer. Again, I think the Oktava are a really nice choice for recording acoustic drums, for example, because they don't have that much of a punchy high-end sort of harshness that you might want to have if, for example, you're recording a drummer who plays relatively loudly or whose cymbals are a bit too harsh. Maybe you want to go for something like these Oktavas, because they sort of seem to soften up the high end. Like this guitar, for example, is very twangy, right? So it's good to have something that sort of attenuates that and doesn't really add to that a lot. And the Sontronics seem to add a lot of twangy, harsh high end to something that in this case already has those characteristics. So again, MXL is here just for reference. We're listening to the Sontronics and the Oktavas. I'm going to do a review for the MXL V67 in the future. But if I would have to pick one microphone out of these three to record acoustic guitars, it would probably be the MXL. Out of the Oktava and Sontronics ones, I would probably go for the Oktava, to be honest, because it's more of a... It seems to be slightly more versatile in some aspects, and it seems to not add too much that you don't want to add to an instrument that already has a lot of characteristics and specific characteristics that are hard to control. So yeah, I would go for the Oktava, because you can then add or remove a lot of stuff from something that's relatively flat. One last thing to mention is that I did have a high pass filter on the Sontronics, and that's really just because I forgot to take it off, which I apologize, because I wanted these to be like relatively flat comparisons between all of them, so they all have the same amount of processing, which is absolutely none, the same amount of input, and everything else. Like none of them have pads on. Like the Sontronics doesn't have a pad on. That's the actual difference of outputs from each microphone. I'm not gonna compress the audio. I'm gonna compress the microphone you're listening to that's capturing my voice, but that's it. I'm not going to compress or EQ any of the other microphones. It's the sound you're getting from the microphones themselves. And again, the only difference is the high pass I forgot to take off of the Sontronics, and that's it. So thank you very much for watching. This is the first review I'm doing on this channel. I'm planning on doing a lot of reviews to come. I'm going to do a couple of reviews on the guitars I own. I own very cheap guitars, and so that's going to be something that's going to be interesting to be talking about. I'm also going to do a review on my Tascam 16x8, which is a really good interface that you can get for the money it is, but it has some problems, and I'm going to be talking about that as well. I'm going to be doing a review on my Genelec 8010s. These are really good if you want some cheaper speakers. Sure, you can get cheap speakers that are bigger than these, but this is a good model. I think it has a less low end than you would expect from studio monitors, but it's a good and interesting model. I love the company. I'm going to be talking about them in the future. I'm also going to do smaller reviews about stuff like this, for example, which these are the Superlux headphones I've been using for the longest time. These are really good. Sorry about that. These are really good and really cheap as well, so be on the lookout for that if you want to know more about the equipment that I'm using, or if you want to know more about the equipment that is for sale on Thomann, because most of the stuff I buy from Thomann. Okay, so thank you very much for watching. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it. Comment on which microphone you think sounds the best. Tell me if you think I'm an idiot. If you think my opinion is completely wrong, I'll be delighted to have a conversation about this in the comment section. If you wish to comment, check out my covers so you can actually hear the microphones in action, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.